Hello, everyone. It's Jayden here for Student Pages. Hope you're all doing well today. Today, we have another financial literacy segment for you. We are here today with Mark Goodyer. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Very well.
Excellent to hear, Mark. So, get things kicked off then. If you could just tell everyone at home what sparked your interest in finance and banking and reward programs in the first place.
Yeah, sure. Take a step back. Left university, age of 21. What I now recognise as probably quite a privileged upbringing, and had no financial literacy whatsoever. So, the first time I had to look after money was at uni, and then I remember I moved into my first role. Actually went to work for NatWest. I spent 3 months behind the counter and then moved there straight to MBNA, which then became Bank of America. And I just recall getting an unexpected bill. It was like £500-600, and I wasn't able to pay it. And banker mum and dad weren't there, and that was the first life lesson in financial literacy about budgeting, saving, and really, sometimes not being able to go out just because you haven't got the money for it. And that was really the lesson I learned at the age of 21, which I now try and pass on to my kids at the age of 8 and 10. If you want to buy something in the shop, you've got to get your pocket money for it, for example.
Yeah.
And I've recently started supporting Daniel Shikani and the fabulous team at Abraham House. And for those that aren't aware of Abraham House, which many might not be, it's a global group of individuals who've come to connect, collaborate, really try and create solutions for prosperity, inclusive prosperity, trying to break down, nations, organizations, and importantly, try and break down divisions across faith as well. And back in 2023, the team launched a global initiative at the World Economic Forum, which I remember speaking to Daniel about, and it was just mind blowing about implementing 1 billion worth of impactful actions to try and help individuals with either financial knowledge, resilience. And it's quite amazing that even in today, where everybody seems to be attached to their phones, in 24% of the global population still has no basic financial knowledge. And sadly, again, majority of those are in lower income countries or segments from a UK perspective as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you've clearly worked your way up a very lengthy ladder in that sense, and that, from where you begun to where you are now. So your primary sector is with reward programs. What would you
Mm-hmm.
say were some of the most challenging aspects of learning about financial literacy at its core, and then using that to implement those kinds of programs? I remember you said
Yeah,
you worked for Bank of America. So what was that process like?
that's right. I mean, again, I started off at the age of 21. I had probably 11 different roles in 15 years. I never thought I'd be in HR, and the reward elements of being in HR. I really came in through the back door, for want of a better phrase. I used to manage the credit card manufacturer of MBNA, who's a credit card company, and then went from there to start managing the benefits providers. So, for example, financial well-being would be a benefits provider. I think
Hmm.
one of the difficulties you have is around clarity and simplicity of message. If I look at my last role within facilities management, there was 30,000 people within the employee base there. I was the UK and Ireland HR director, and we rolled out a financial wellbeing program. Many individuals, English isn't their first language for starters,
Hmm.
which makes it a different type of challenge. And then again, because sometimes, when I was working at MBNA Bank of America, you almost take for granted the acronym of financial services. And really, it's about breaking it down to basics to try and explain and educate. And what I used to thoroughly enjoy is we had probably 2,000 sites within the last organization, and really going to a round table to really share that, again, taking my experience back when I was 21, that it's okay to say, I needed education. I needed support. I didn't know where to go, when the monetary value was low. And I think now, when you hear some of the stories, it's around, my washing machine broke down the other month. I'm in a fortunate position. I can go and get a new one if needs be, or I can afford to pay for the washing machine to have the insurance to get it fixed. Many individuals, sadly, if the washing machine breaks down, aren't able to then go. So it's about really bringing these examples to life as well, So it's a far extreme from what you might call, banking, but it really is real world challenges that people come across, bringing it to life that way. Which sometimes we use jargon when we're talking about reward programs, and it's really, for want of a better phrase, it's using plain English.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. It's funny you mentioned the washing machine scenario as well, because I think for, like you said, you were 21 when you started out on this path, and it's like a lot of our listeners are students, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Problems like that arising can be the be all and end all for students, because again, they typically don't have that knowledge and that backbone in the finance world, or like the sort of money management world. So it's just a complete stumping point. It completely ruins them for a little while. So I suppose for yourself then, when you were starting out on your financial education journey before you got into the wider world of the business side of it, what advice would you now have given yourself then to get yourself to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not very sexy to talk about budgeting as a student. I'm not going to sit here and say that I did it, because I didn't. But if somebody had probably brought it to life for me about, you need to budget for going down the students' union, you need to budget to
Mhm.
go out this time of the, if you I used to play hockey, so we used to have booster on a Wednesday, that kind of thing. If somebody had really broken it down into some of the basics of budgeting, then that would have helped. I think so. That'd be number one, is make a budget. Number two would be try and stick to the budget, because that then allows you, again, if the washing machine in the rented accommodation or the hold, whatever it might be, does break down, you need to go to a laundrette, which is going to be more expensive. Even if you've got that little bit extra put aside, and if you don't spend it, then it's always there at the end of the month, theoretically, for the students' union. I think try and start saving. Again, your life happens pretty quickly. I'm no longer 21, as you can imagine, but it's good to get into that saving habit. Again, I try and two children, bring it to life. One, if you give him £5, will go to the local shop and he will spend it like that. Whereas the other one has probably got more money upstairs than I've got saved down, because she's a saver. Quite interesting.
I fear I was the former when I was younger, honestly.
Me too. And then I think today's world, credit is becoming easier to get hold of somewhat, but potentially more expensive. And I think, from a serious perspective, is to not abuse credit. If it is needed, then it is needed. But again, not to abuse credit would be probably the third or fourth tip to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of students that see credit and sort of see it as free money, and that's
Yeah, I
just
did.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did, and it's taken a considerable amount of time to then pay that off. And I think, again, it's like when you look at a number of products, is that when you, from a reward perspective, one of the concerns when we more recently launched financial wellbeing product, which I truly believe in, but when I scanned what was in the marketplace, probably going back as far as 8 years ago now, pre-COVID, which obviously delayed a few things. But it was more that, again, having worked in financial services 15 years, being a bit of a geek, I could probably explain more about compound residual interest than most people. But what none of the providers could show me is, okay, here's a very simple loan product. How are you going to then help our employees, educate them, so they're not then doubly racking up? So you consolidate all the debts, but then you've still got the credit cards, you've still got the store cards,
Mm.
so you start spending on them again. And no real provider initially had that, which then changed. Didn't change because I'd said it, but I'm sure that a number of potential clients said that. And I have to say, nowadays, the provider salary finance that the organization uses, it's fantastic. There probably hasn't been as many loans taken up because of the credit scoring of the employee base. But what's been incredibly pleasing to see is a number of people using the hints, the tips, the tools, the education, which will then help them in the longer term rather than the debt consolidation.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's funny actually, because what I was going to head on to next is regarding wider education about people having this information freely to them. What gaps do you think are lacking in the education system
Mm-hmm.
for financial literacy? Because again, personally, obviously, outside looking in, I just don't think there's enough taught about it in the education system about how to manage your finances. It feels like such an obvious thing for life, and yet it's not there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's not exactly real world. Again, it's a considerable number of years since I was at school, and I, still speak to the two kids. And much of what they're getting taught is very basic mathematics. And again, I've got a number of friends who are teachers as well in secondary schools, and they're teaching pretty much the same as what I went through many, many moons ago. So it's about how can we bring it to life? Again, make it real world, make it fun, utilize gaming scenarios, stories, whatever, suits a child really. How can you make it an activity? Again, it's fun based, which is where kids learn. It's got to be interactive, enjoyable, and relatable. I think
Yeah.
more often than not today, you see many kids either attached to a PS or whatever it might be, or a laptop or an iPad or anything. And so the tools are there, but it's still quite archaic in the prescribed, should we say, curriculum.
Yeah, it's funny because my two little brothers actually learn so much of what they know now regarding finance through V-Bucks on Fortnite.
Yeah.
Like the currency in the game, it's like they'd get pocket money or whatever, and obviously in that game you can buy certain amounts of it for certain prices, but if you
Absolutely
buy a
right.
slightly more expensive one, you get slightly more. But they
Mhm.
just went for the cheapest one every week, and it was like, no, if you save your money, you actually get more for your money with that one. But they just never took them a while to get there.
Yeah, literally had that conversation with Jacob, my 10-year-old, a couple of weekends ago. It's like, yeah, you get your £5, but if you wait until you get 10, then you can get, 150%. Naturally, he spent it immediately like your brothers, but
Yeah, yeah.
there's an opportunity where, again, a number of the gaming companies could also help in that education if there was a more joined up methodology to do that, or desire to do that as well. Because naturally, they don't want to, because they'd rather have the single pound spent
Competitive
one
industry,
at a
isn't it?
time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, 100%. So I suppose then for students again, sort of I suppose 18
Mm-hmm.
to 21 type range,
Sure.
is there any tools or resources that you would recommend they use, like anything you've seen online that might be particularly helpful?
Yeah, for me, it's more, as you say, 18 to 21, 22-year-olds. How do you make it more tangible, connecting them to student lives? I don't know, simulations, case studies potentially, but again, in the methodology of how they're shared with the students. Or actually, should universities, question mark, help students at the age of 18, in those first few weeks of maybe onboarding, as to helping create mock budgets or whatever it might be, something similar. Because again, a lot of kids, it's the first time they've been away from home. And they have never needed
Mhm.
to create such a thing, and it's quite a boring subject, isn't it? So why would you? You've got better things to do with your time than that. But I think again, if you use scenarios like renting a room, renting a flat, whatever it might be, buying a phone, or the books that you need for the course that you're doing. If you use those examples within those first few weeks, months of joining a course, I personally think that would help.
I made that mistake personally in the first and second year. I sort of just had this minimum wage job. When the money came in, it was spent. And then the next paycheck, the money came in, it was spent. It's only
Mhm.
recently now that I've finished university and I'm looking to rent in York now that I've started doing what you described in that, sort of working out, okay, this would cost this would cost this. And from my perspective, it all seemed so scary and daunting
Mhm.
initially. But when you break it down and do it in a way that's relatable to you, it's not, is it?
No,
It's nowhere near as terrifying a subject as it seems from the outside.
you can make it so it isn't as scary as well. Yeah, it can be quite daunting when you're suddenly put in charge of X many £100 a month to live on, to, for food, drink, books, whatever it might be for rent. So to taking that feeling away, because there's enough challenges when you're going to university in the first place, isn't there? You're
Yeah.
moving away, new friendship groups, whatever it might be, very often, more often than not, new city as well. So to help in that way, I believe should be an important part of that, again, onboarding that all universities should help with.
No, 100%. I think it's good when universities actually have that help available. So, what would you say are the most important financial skills and knowledge that people can develop to help them keep some money in the bank?
Yeah, again, going back to the first question, for me, it really is around budgeting. If you haven't got a clue what your budget is, then you're going to be struggling to save at all. So budgeting would be number one, and then again, save versus spend. I certainly used to have very much a spend mentality. And then over a period of time, as I probably become a bit older, a bit wiser, a bit grayer, then I moved to more save. There's nothing wrong with saving as well. So those are the two for me: budgeting and save versus spend.
Yep. It's funny. The last conversation I had with Annabelle was interesting because she brought up a concept actually that I've recently adapted. In that I used to do things where I'd get my bi-weekly paycheck, I'd spend what I needed, and whatever I'd left over, I would put into my savings account. When now
Mm-hmm.
it's like the minute I get paid, I put a certain amount in my savings account and work with what's left over because again, it's you feel more. It's interesting, isn't it, how you change your spending habits depending on what you think you
Absolutely,
have available.
100%, 100%. That's a great way of looking at it.
So I think for one big question to end things off with, in all of your years of experience, all the different sectors you've worked in, if you had to narrow it down to maybe one or two things, what are the biggest financial mistakes that you see people making and how can they be avoided?
Sure, I think one for me, having again, my first role was sat taking loan calls, people applying for loans with MBNA before I worked my way up. I think spending more than you earn is often then fueled by high interest rate store cards, credit cards, call it what you will, which can then lead to debt and instability. So I think again to avoid that wherever possible, if you've got a realistic budget that it helps track income, expenses, whilst exactly what you said with regards to trying to put some money aside at the beginning of each week. Again, last organisation, many of the employees are on national minimum wage, like national living wage or real living wage. So I wouldn't want to sit here and patronise them because more often than not, they were working overtime to make ends meet, potentially having a
Yeah.
second job or even a third job within the household, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't want to patronize in any way whatsoever. But and more often than not, those are the individuals who are penalized by the financial markets because the interest rates that they can get, maybe they can't go into a high street bank and get
Mhm.
an interest rate that I might be able to, or somebody on a higher income might be able to. So again, that education is critical. Possible delay purchasing. I go back to and what we were saying about V-Bucks. If you
Yeah.
save up that £10, then you can get maybe 2,500 points rather than 2,000 points if you buy them individually. And I think try to get financial advice. It is out there for free as well, impartial, which is important. I think there are many individuals who probably don't go and speak to individuals who are there to help them. I think for me, I think next bit of advice would be that not having an emergency fund is very often where people are impacted significantly. I didn't when I got that £600 phone bill. There will be things, might be something wrong with the car, might be a medical bill or whatever it might be. But if you can create that fund of trying to have even a month's pay to live on or a monetary amount, 250, £300. But again, I know how challenging that is for a number of people. But I think that really is, that's one of the mistakes I've seen made and one of the ways to reduce that mistake being made by just trying to create that small fund. Whilst some people that, £250 is a hell of a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it would help. And I think the final one for me, the third one would be that money's not a taboo subject.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
people don't feel that they can talk to family and friends about money, which then impacts their mental well-being as well. So I think really trying to have that open communication, open dialogue, again with family, friends, it really is crucial because there's a lot of people suffering out there from mental well-being caused by financial illiteracy or which then causes debt. But I think that is vital because I've seen sadly too many people not share problems which have been impacted because of that.
No, absolutely. Not having that support circle, I imagine, would be
Mm-hmm.
very difficult, especially when you don't know what you're doing, even if you're surrounded by other people who maybe don't know so much. At the very least, it feels nice knowing there's other people in the same boat as you.
100%. And again, there can be X many people in a room all thinking the same thing. Problem shared is a problem halved. And well, actually, I did this and that helped, or I did that and that helped, rather than suffering. And again, I sat here through experience of, when I got that bill, I didn't want to talk to anybody because I'd never needed to speak to somebody. And it was only somebody recognizing that, Mark looks a bit down there, that I was able to share. And he was like, okay, well, this is what we need to do, and worked it through with me to give me a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, shall we say.
No, 100%. No, totally with you on that one. So, Mark, I mean, thank you ever so much for your insight. It
No
honestly
problem
has
at
been
all.
very eye-opening. I'm sure it'll be so helpful for a lot of the students at home listening. So, yeah, thank you ever so much for your time. And it was brilliant speaking to you.
And you. Excellent. Thanks very much.
Nice one. Cheers, Mark. Have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.